Well, good evening, patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. How we all doing tonight? So, share this out. For some odd reason, I'm able to stream to Facebook, a Facebook account by the name of Canada First. So share it out if you're on the Facebook platform and you're seeing this video. Share, share, share. It's also on YouTube, my new YouTube channel. I went from 11,000 subscribers to 0, and I sort of stayed away from YouTube for a while. I'm trying it again. I see there's some people on the YouTube platform, so that's good. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Sharon. Also, of course, streaming to DLive, streaming to Odyssey, streaming to Twitter. Twitter seems to be the most responsive so far to date these days. So obviously that's one where a lot of people watch. I mean, I have 37,000 followers there, so that helps. And also on Twitch. So, you know, slowly getting back in the game here. Thanks, RB. So, an interesting day today, to say the least. There's lots going on politically, provincially, and federally, which is a good sign because there's a lot of people that are looking for change. There's a lot of people looking for something different than the establishment has offered. Because really the only thing the establishment has proven to offer is tyranny, and we can't have that anymore. So there's lots going on, and that's a good thing. There's lots of different groups, which is okay. And again, in the meeting I was at today, I got to have some discussions with a number of different people, and this discussion came up. And I've said this before, I'll say it again as a reminder to folks. A lot of us are we cherish freedom, we cherish individual freedom, and that's a common theme among patriots and freedom fighters, because we really do cherish independence, we cherish sovereignty, both nationally and personally. These are values that a lot of us, or most of us, if not all of us, share and cherish. But in that, because we're all independent thinkers and we make decisions and based on our best interest, or our family's best interest, or our community's best interest, or our province's best interest, or on a bigger scale, our country's best interest. There's a lot of different groups that pop up, and that's okay. And one thing that all of us have to understand and accept is that there's going to be different people leading different groups with slightly different agendas, with slightly different, values possibly. And that's okay, because we're all still going in the same direction, right? Generally speaking, we all want the restoration of our rights and freedoms. We all want good governance. We all want smaller government, and more autonomy, both provincially as a province, but also individually. I think we all want more autonomy. We don't want the government dictating our business. We don't want the government sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong. We don't want our government to have control over our lives. And so these are common themes and values that we all share. But we're going to have different groups, and that's completely okay. Politically, it's it's a little bit more challenging because, we want to unify all of the people that share these common core values. And what I don't want to see happen, and I've been in discussions as of late because I'm feeling a lot better and I'm getting more involved, but I've had a lot of discussions with people. Um, and what I don't want to see is what we're seeing in Alberta, which is I think Alberta has five um, quote unquote independence parties or political entities on the right side of the political spectrum. And that's a mess. And that's a lot of ego. Um, and so I don't want to see that, happen in Saskatchewan. And so been in these discussions. And so before I get into what I witnessed today, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of other entities on the provincial scene politically. So we have the Buffalo Party. I think everybody's at least heard of the Buffalo Party. The Buffalo Party raised a lot of eyebrows in the last provincial election, getting a lot of support, especially in the southeastern part of the province, also the southwestern part of the province, and in a number of ridings, which is a good thing. Because we need something to oppose the establishment. We need an entity. And so before the last federal election that I ran in last summer, I believe it was, where I said it looks like most likely I'm going to be, joining the Buffalo Party, and I had joined the Buffalo Party, and then promoting that as the option. So a few things have happened since then. There was I happened to fall into a coma for 5 weeks, and it took a few months to recover from that experience. So I was sort of out of the loop, and it's interesting because I was telling this story to someone today. Um, Not too many people called or text when I was in the hospital recovering, but as soon as I announced that I was going home and recovery was going well at home, my phone blew up, uh, telling telling me about this new party that started and and called the True North Saskatchewan Party, which I got to be honest, I was not big on the name. The name didn't excite me. Um, I thought it was too closely attached to Derek Sloan and what Derek did, and I had this discussion with somebody today too in regards to Derek. As many times as I've talked to Derek and had discussions with Derek, I always liked the guy. He's articulate, he's bright. Um, but I didn't like obviously that he wanted to start a party a few months before the last federal election, never materialized. And then once it didn't materialize and the election was over, then he switched and went to Ontario to start another party, creating, another on top of all the other parties that were created provincially in Ontario, um, pulling more votes, which is very similar to what he did federally. And so I've lost a ton of respect for Derek. I think that was really bad optics. I thought it was a mistake. But then to start a party provincially in Saskatchewan called True North, basically in the public's eye, I believe, hitches the wagon to Derek Sloan. And so for me, the naming of it was questionable. Again, nothing to do with me. It's really none of my business because I was right. I was in a coma. So um, but whatever. I get it. I understand the need to come up with a party that recognizes particular values, especially Christian values. Um, I mean, let's face it. At the end of the day, Western civilization, Canada, our country, was founded on Christian values, individual freedoms, and rights. So that, that's a big part of it. We are in a spiritual war, whether you believe or not. The fact of the matter is, it is a spiritual war, and I think you know part of coming back into community and coming back in together and unifying, spirituality has to play a big part in that. And that's just what I believe. And again, I'm not the best spokesman for religious folks because I'm not a religious man, but I am spiritual and I do believe. And this is a spiritual war that we're in. So yes, that has to be an element of the political landscape. So there's been this plan to start this True North Saskatchewan party, and of course I know a lot of the people that are in it, and I respect them. I respect all of them very much, and they, through my experience of being really sick, they were extremely supportive to my wife and to me, and what I was going through and the prayers that I received, phenomenal. And, of course it's a little emotional to talk about it, but it is what it is. And I have the utmost respect for these people. Um, but I just, again, I don't want to see this fracturing of the movement politically, where we have all of these entities. It scares me to death to have these parties, splitting votes um, in two or three or four different ways. Um, so, I don't know where the True North Party Saskatchewan is going to land. I know there's discussions. I was in discussions this morning. I'm not going to get into any specifics, but they are looking at things. And we should know something in the next couple of days. But then there's the Buffalo Party. The Buffalo Party has had some messaging issues historically. I think a lot of people perceive the Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan as a separatist party. Talking and attending a meeting with Chris Carley the other day, he very, very clearly stated that the party is not focused on separatism. And that their messaging needs to be more clear. And I couldn't agree more. I think they've had some problem with, interim leadership. I think they were far, and I've said this, so I don't have a problem stating this publicly. I think they've had an issue with, of course, messaging. I think they dropped the ball with the COVID. There were rallies in Saskatoon where we invited their previous interim leader, Wade Sierra, to attend the rally and speak. He turned that invitation down, which I found to be very odd. I think they made some mistakes politically. I think they made some mistakes optically. I think they needed to be more involved in announcing what the government was doing. I think there was a certain level of fear. I don't know. I wasn't involved, so I can't say what the internal workings were in the decision-making process. But I know there was some drama in the party, and you're going to have that in any new political party. You're going to have some of that, and so it goes with the territory. But then, as I said, I attended the meeting here last week with some Buffalo people, Chris Carley, the president of the party, and I liked what he had to say. They're very much grassroots. They very much want to rely on the people, the members of the party driving policy, electing a leader, which they finally did last night. Phil Zajac is now the leader of the Buffalo Party, who was a PPC candidate in the 2019 election down in Estevan area. So congratulations to Phil. He is now the official leader, an elected leader of the Buffalo Party. So that's good news. And so I like I said, I like what they had to say. I think, values are pretty in line. Even the people from the True North um, um, proposed party or whatever the idea that's floated around. I think a lot of them were fairly satisfied with what Chris had to say in regards to, the values, and ultimately it should be grassroots driven. It should be driven by the people, by the members. They need to determine the policy, submit policy. There should be a convention. These policies need to be voted on. Blah blah blah. But it's very, it seems like they're heading in the right direction as far as a new political party in Saskatchewan. Um, and I think there's some value. There's some folks that don't like the name Buffalo Party, but I think there's some value in it. When I hear it, I don't hear negative connotations. I don't perceive it negatively as I know some others do, but I understand that it's not focused on separatism. It's focused on independence and autonomy. And here's the thing about this whole separation thing. The reason Quebec gets so much from the federal government is because Quebec has threatened to secede. Quebec has threatened to leave. And they've held referendums, and they've you know utilized their leverage through this process, which is why, as a PPC member and previous candidate, I am able to support a Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan, living in Saskatchewan, because it's incredibly important when you're negotiating with the federal government that you bring some leverage to the table. And if a political party in Saskatchewan can effectively communicate that they are not primarily separatist, however, if there is ever the mood in the province to have a referendum, and the polls suggest 50 to 60 to maybe 70% in favor of separation, then that gives incredible amount of leverage to that political entity, to that political, possibly even government. And so if you can bring that to the table, if you have that in your pocket when you're negotiating with the feds, it's very powerful. It doesn't mean you have to follow through. It doesn't mean you have to separate, because I also have issues with separation. And I've spoken about this before too, where I'm not a big fan of separation. It may come to the point, out of sheer survival, that we have to pull the plug. We're not there yet. We're not even close to there yet, because you need, obviously, a whole lot of support for that type of thing. We're not there yet. Saskatchewan is well behind Alberta in regards to the idea of separatism. In fact, it scares a lot of people away. But it's an important piece to the puzzle. It's important leverage. But ultimately, separation, I don't think, is the best option for Saskatchewan or Alberta. We are presently witnessing, and as people learn more, we're witnessing the country of Ukraine, a country of 40 million people, that's 3 million more than Canada as a whole, being completely used and abused by the globalists. And just as an example to that, look at the Maidan protests. You have ultra nationalists who want Ukraine to be Ukrainian and only Ukrainian, which means they don't want Russians, which means they don't want any other. They want to be fully Ukrainian and only speak Ukrainian. So those are the ultra nationalists, and in some cases, factions of that group are verified to be Nazis. They're so ultra nationalist. Interesting, though, when you look at the Maidan protests, how many EU flags were in the crowd, right? So here you have what's supposedly ultranationalist, yet the reason for the protest is because their president, who was fairly cozy with Putin, didn't want his country to be associated with the EU, which, all things being equal, is probably preferable or should be preferable to anybody who's ultranationalist in the Ukraine and wants to maintain their sovereignty. Joining the EU completely waters down that sovereignty. Being part of the EU and then the bigger UN agenda diminishes that sovereignty. The World Economic Forum has had their paws in Ukraine for years and has been chipping away at their sovereignty and will continue to do so as part of their globalist agenda. So if a country of 40 million can be used, manipulated, abused as Ukraine is being abused and has been abused for a long time, is corrupted as Ukraine is through all of this, through interference from the US, the Bidens, the Biden family. Just imagine what they would do with a small entity of, let's say, Alberta and Saskatchewan, 6 million people. Imagine what they would attempt to do, especially a small country like that, chock full of resources, and not just oil and gas, but uranium and obviously wheat and canola and everything else that we have in as far as resources in this province in Alberta. We would be continually under attack, and there would be a lot of games played, and there would be a lot of appointed people into politics. It would be a real tough slog. So I don't think separation is the answer for that reason. But again, the idea that you have the support of the people in a province, whether it's Alberta or Saskatchewan, in favor of separation gives that political entity an incredible amount of power and leverage when negotiating with the federal government, up to and including constitutional reform, which is, as far as I'm concerned, incredibly necessary. We need constitutional reform so we can look after our best interests in Saskatchewan and in Alberta. So, how do you do that? Well, you need leverage, and this is one of the ways. So, again, that's the Buffalo Party. I think they're going to clean up their messaging. But then today, there was a little meeting that was planned for Prairie Land, and I'm just going to show you the flyer. So, the future of Saskatchewan, concerns of today, solutions for tomorrow. So they mentioned a lot of things here down the side. You can have a look at it. And they had a number of speakers lined up. And so when I saw this flyer, of course, yeah, I'm absolutely going to be there. I'm very curious as to what's happening. Hi, Pauline. Yes, potash, coal, absolutely. So yeah, I was pretty excited to go to this thing. I'm such a political junkie these days, and it's about where I live. It's about my home province and what's going to happen politically. So there were some rumors before the meeting that there would be an announcement of a new political party. So I'm just going to go through the speakers that they had today, and just sort of highlight what each speaker sort of spoke about. and then I'll give you my impression. But first and foremost, the first and primary takeaway from today, I was extremely impressed with the number of people that attended. That it just to see that there's that many people that are interested in a political meeting um, really encourages me. I can remember, and I had this discussion today too with a few folks. I remember back in the day where I was an island by myself screaming about, you know, globalism and the globalist agenda. And again, I was alone, other than a few other right wing nut jobs and conspiracy theorists. It was pretty lonely. But, here we are based on some of the consequences that are uh, happening due to um globalism and their globalist agenda. It's again, COVID is and was a huge impetus for people waking up and just scratching their head, thinking something is very wrong. Um, and of course, I've said since the beginning that we have to use COVID just like they are, but we have to use it to our advantage, connect some dots for people, educate people, inform them, let them know how COVID is part of this. And our prime minister openly admitted it again, saying that they're using COVID as a mechanism to achieve the goals of sustainable development and to reimagine the economy. In other words, translation, destroy the economy and destroy our sovereignty and fall under global governance and global control, um, and into social credit. This is ultimately, the agenda, the plan, and has been in the works for a very long time. So we have to use this consequence, this crisis that was created um, to condition and socially engineer the masses. We have to use it to connect the dots so people understand that these people, these globalists, the World Economic Forum, the UN, will stop at nothing to attempt to achieve these goals, and up to and including a pandemic or plandemic, depending on how you look at it. Um, and so we have to use these things. We have to use these consequences. We have to look at the Ukraine situation, the crisis. We have to look at it with an open mind, with a critical mind, and try to understand what it is they're using the Ukraine crisis for. Again, I've heard the politicians say they have to use the Ukraine crisis to achieve their goals. And what are they doing? Raising gas prices to the point of no consumption. It's getting so insane, but they have the situation for the excuse for high fuel costs, right? And which is a completely BS argument. It's a completely BS crisis that they've created, because right here in Canada, if we were to open the taps, we would have more than enough. We could supply the world with the oil reserves that we have. So it's completely ridiculous, but they're doing it anyway, right? And there's enough people, of course, enamored with the media that get their information from the media that fall right into I support Ukraine without any critical thought. So, anyways, um, the meeting was very well attended, um, and the speakers were very good. I enjoyed it. So I'm just over and above all that. I did meet Ken Rutherford. Seems to be sort of the point man of this proposed party. He spoke last, and I approached him after, and I said, "Very good. I'm very impressed with how many people have attended. Fantastic." And they only planned it within 6 days, so to get that many people attending in that short a time is very good. It means people are ready for something. Um, but I did mention that, without, you know, fluffing his tires or pumping his tires too much, I said, I also have a criticism. And that criticism is in none of these speeches um, identified the why, right? There was a lot of the what being discussed, and that's great. And we have to talk about the what. But once people all agree and recognize the what's, it's very important that people understand the why. Because as soon as people understand the why to this puzzle, then they will be receptive to a solution. And of course, the solution is a non establishment political party that can say no to the globalist agenda. Even within our existing constitution in Canada, the provinces have the power to say no to the federal government, regardless of what it is. Healthcare is the responsibility of the provinces. Why is Scott Moe taking orders from Justin Trudeau and Theresa Tam? Why is he doing this? He could have very easily said no. And if push come to shove, he could exercise his power under Section 33, notwithstanding clause, and has said and could have said no. And he didn't. So so I just mentioned to Ken that I would have liked to have had somebody speak to the why. You know, how are they using COVID? Why are they using COVID to achieve the goals of sustainable development? What is sustainable development? What is the agenda? What is World Economic Forum Great Reset? The UN and the World Economic Forum partnering in June of 2019. These are things that when you have an audience of 1,000 or 1,500 people, how many people were there? You have to take advantage of that situation. You have to be able to, you want to educate those people that are there and inform them of what the why is. So there's this a real understanding of what's, what's the root problem, what's the root devil, right, in all of this. And once again, once they understand the why, then you can sort of offer the solution. And so that was my criticism, and I told Ken that. A great guy. Ken seems like a great guy. I spoke with him for a while there. Andre Memari, of course, was there as well. I spoke with Andre. I spoke with Nadine. So, anyways, speakers. The first speaker was Spencer Botts, otherwise known as Pretty Boy, a trucker that was in Ottawa representing Saskatchewan, represented Saskatchewan very well. Had his truck at the event, which was cool. In fact, I have a picture of it on Twitter. Just pull that up. There it is. So there's his truck, and that was pretty cool that they had it right in the venue. His truck is completely filled with signatures from the people that were in attendance in Ottawa, and it reminded me how badly I wanted to be there. But things are as they are. So that was cool. He had that, and what he did after actually is they have a board. I didn't take a picture of it. I should have, but on the back part, um, they had a whiteboard where they asked people in attendance at this meeting to sign and pledge a donation to help move this thing forward. So that was cool to see, and he of course. Hang on a sec. He, of course, told us his story of the convoy and his trip and just how phenomenal it all was, with all of the support and so many people, lining these overpasses and then of course pulling into Ottawa and having that freedom community together, phenomenal. And so it was great to hear his story and When the thing was over, I went over and signed the truck, so that was cool. Or signed the not the truck. You're not allowed to sign the truck. Only people who are in Ottawa can sign it. But I signed that board in the back, and so that was good to be part of. Christy and Danae from the Sask Alliance are school teachers, and they gave a great presentation. Back in October, they put together this Sask Alliance, and they're an alliance of teachers that have come together and essentially criticizing and protesting the government's mandates and masking kids and the proposition of vaccinating kids who just don't get sick from COVID and um, so they had a really good speech. I really enjoyed both of them. Great folks, and they both did a great job. Nadine Ness then spoke. Of course, she's very pregnant, so they made sure that she was comfortable. They sat her down on a bar stool and she gave her speech and Nadine's articulate and not scared to speak in public. She does a good job. Um, and kudos to her. She's, like I said, very pregnant, and obviously uh, that situation makes things pretty uncomfortable, especially when you're under lights and a lot of people. So kudos to her. Dr. Francis Christian, uh, my favorite speaker. Um, I attended the event in Pike Lake a couple of weeks ago with Theo Fleury, and Dr. Christian spoke there as well. Uh, he's seems to always be my favorite speaker at these events. He's such a smart man, intelligent man, articulate man, and truly believes in the oath that he took, and believes that it should be honored by everyone in the industry, healthcare industry. And I say industry, but I mean, being public, it's far from an industry, but you know what I mean. But yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. I love the man. Dr. Eric Payne from out of Alberta, he gave a remote speech. He was very good as well, obviously identifying a lot of the issues that government has not been held accountable for. Um, just the data that's coming out that flies in the face of everything, every government across the board in Canada, whether federal or provincial, um, you know, can't argue. It's really falling apart, their whole narrative. But we have to stay on top of it all because they're already laying tracks that in the fall, these mandates will come back, and we have to unite. We have to come together en masse, and we have to be able to show them that we have the masses on our side, that we have, the masses in favor of freedom, in favor of our rights, in favor of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that backs up our inalienable rights. And doesn't do a very good job of it. That's one of the things I would suggest we need to change if we're going to do some constitutional reform. And one of those things would be just to completely pull out Section 1. Obviously, that's been abused, thoroughly abused. And what COVID has done is shown us that governments will abuse that section where none of them, not one provincial government, the federal government, municipal governments, none of them have been held accountable for ignoring their obligation under Section 1, which is to demonstrably justify their measures or limitations to the charter in a democracy. None of them have done this. Not one government has justified according to Section 1. None of them. They've completely ignored it. And we have judges that have allowed them to completely ignore that obligation under the charter. So what's the answer to that? Get rid of it. Get rid of it. make the charter hard and fast, that you can't manipulate it, you can't interpret it, you can't abuse it, like our governments have, obviously. So, anyways, I off on a bit of a tangent. And then we heard from Andre Memari. Andre's a very good speaker. Andre told us, his connection to freedom and what it means to him coming from Iran. Of course, as you know, and he had mentioned in his speech that before 1979, before the Islamic Revolution, Iran was prosperous, was free, and then in came the Islamic Revolution, and that changed things dramatically. So much so that his family literally escaped Iran, and fled to Canada, where at that time, of course, was the land of the free. And so through that experience, he very much cherishes freedom. And this is why he's so active as a lawyer, why he quit his law firm and moved to the JCCF, um, and, and genuinely cherishes freedom and sees what's happening. And of course, he's talked to a number of people who have immigrated to Canada from communist countries or fascist countries or Islamic countries, where things aren't as free. But we're seeing this slow degrading of our freedoms here in Canada. So he gave that speech. It was very good and much appreciated. Jamie St. Clair is a veteran. He lives down in Regina Beach. He talked about his Afghanistan experience, and quite harrowing. And kudos to Jamie. If you're seeing this or hearing this, thank you for your service. Yeah, he gave a great speech, and basically I used it as an analogy that, we have to go through some of these consequences, some of these hard times, but we will overcome and we will eventually win, because evil always loses to good. And we have to ensure that, and we have to get involved, and we have to be accountable, because ultimately our governments can only do what we allow them to do. And we need to take responsibility back again. We've been very fat and lazy for a number of decades, where we sort of let it slide. And the politicians have obviously taken advantage of that. And they think they can push us around, and they think they can take our freedoms and take our rights, and they can't. And we have to tell them very clearly, unequivocally, that they can't. And the days of them doing it are over. So we have to do that. So it was a great speech. Thanks again, Jamie. Nadine Wilson, who is a sitting MLA, not with the Sask Party anymore. She's independent. And kudos to her for finally breaking away from the establishment and representing her constituency in the best way she sees fit. And that was by going independent and being able to say what she wants to say and represent the best interest of her constituents. So kudos to Nadine. You know, the criticism, of course, you could have done it sooner. If I was to choose, I would have hoped that you and a number of others would have left a lot sooner. But you know what? Anybody who does and recognizes that the best way to represent your constituents is to do that, hey, kudos to you. I respect that. Jerry Ritz, former Reform Party MP, conservative MP, I guess retired, but very well-spoken individual. You could see when he got on stage, he sort of commanded the microphone. He commanded that podium and the audience. It's interesting to watch these characters that have been around the block. But yeah, very well-spoken, humorous, good speech. And And then finally, Jason Dearborn, been in politics for a long time. Um, Interesting individual. He was a previous MLA for the Sask Party when it was first created. I think he did a couple of terms. Interesting individual, and yeah. So all in all, it was really good. So again, my criticism was none of these speakers, and again, it's a minor criticism. It is what it is. But none of these speakers connected the dots. So I talked to Andre, and they are planning another event in the fairly near future, and they are hopeful that they'll be able to attract, somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10,000, possibly at SaskTel Center. That would be fantastic. And Andre had mentioned today that they would like me to speak at that event if it's a go. And of course, I said yes, most definitely I would. So hopefully be able to fill in some of the gaps that I noticed in today. But again, all in all, I thought it was very well done. The messaging was very good. I was told that there was no coordination between the speakers, that they were free to speak about whatever they wanted to speak about and what they brought to the table, which is important, and that's good. So yeah, very interesting day. Very interesting event. Again, impressed with the amount of people that showed up. Now, so here's the question. This is conversations I was having with people, because literally, here's the thing with me. So I'm federally focused politically, right? Ran for the PPC twice, but I live in Saskatchewan, and I have a huge stake in this province, as you all do that live here. And we need change. We need change dramatically in government. We need responsible government. We need a government that's accountable to the people. And we don't have that. We don't have that anymore. And that needs to change. The only way it's going to change is if we can unite and offer the people of Saskatchewan a viable alternative. And at the end of the day, so I think at this point, again, we'll wait and see what happens with the True North folks, but it's looking more and more like they may consider joining the Buffalo Party, and falling under that umbrella. So then, we have two options outside of the establishment in Saskatchewan. One doesn't have a name, because obviously it looks like they would wait until the people of this entity decide. Some of the speeches today, one of the individuals, I can't remember who it was, mentioned that they'll have 3 or 4 names to choose from, and that the members will choose the name, which is a good idea. And you'll have the Buffalo Party. Eventually, the cream will rise to the top, as it always does. So if by limiting to 2 entities outside the establishment, I think is okay. We can deal with that, because sooner or later, the cream will rise to the top. And at that time, whoever the other entity is that didn't rise to the top, could be either one of them, has to concede and come together under the shared common core values. And there are enough of those common core values that it shouldn't be that hard, other than swallowing some ego, to come together under one umbrella and provide that option to the people of Saskatchewan. Because that's what it's about. It's about the people. It's not about an individual and their ego. That kills movements. Egos and agendas kill movements. I've seen it so many times. So I'm hopeful that however this plays out, um, whether it's this entity that I saw today or it's the Buffalo Party, I don't care. As long as it falls under one umbrella and we can all come together and offer this option to the people of Saskatchewan. Um, we'll see where that cookie crumbles. It's again, I don't know if the Buffalo Party, say in Saskatoon, could host an event and attract 1,000 or 1,500 people. I'm not sure they can do that. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what kind of support they would have. I think their support is much stronger in, say, southern Saskatchewan, um, where they've had some success in elections, and this is the benefit of Buffalo. But interesting to see. So ultimately, the people will decide, right? The people will decide who they want as the option, and that's precisely how this is supposed to work. And when the people make that decision, whoever's in second place will have to swallow their ego, swallow their pride, and come under the umbrella, however this works out. That's how I see it. That's how I am hopeful it works that way, because it would be insane to have three entities in Saskatchewan outside of the establishment. It would be insane. That would be a sure loss politically, to have three entities fighting the establishment. It just won't work. Simply won't work. The other thing is, there are, just like the federal Conservatives, there is party loyalty. There is a lot of people that have donated a lot of money to, say, the Sask Party, and for them to just pull out because there's another option that looks, somewhat appealing and attractive, very, very hard to pull those people away. Very hard for party loyalists to stop being loyal, to pull their support and move to another entity. Very, very difficult. The only way it would be possible on the scale that's necessary would be to have one entity under an umbrella offered to the people of Saskatchewan. An entity that respects the voters, an entity that respects their constituents, an entity that respects freedom, an entity that respects rights and liberty and individual freedom and sovereignty, and wants to do what's best for the people of Saskatchewan. Come together under that umbrella with the circumstances that we've been put in. That's a recipe for changing the government and moving this province where it needs to go. And so I'm hopeful that that'll happen. I was very encouraged by today to see that many people that are very interested in change. So yeah, all in all, a good day. And hopefully we can, at some point in the fairly near future, come together and unify, because that's the only way we win. It's the only way we take back our province. And ultimately, it's the only way we take back our country from the federal perspective. So anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to share tonight. I wanted to talk about this meeting today, and share some thoughts and opinions and criticisms, and hopefully, come together. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to help in the way I know how to help, by sort of bridging, the two or three entities, and hopefully help bring people and unify people, because it's incredibly important, that we do that we unify and we come together as a force to offer the people of Saskatchewan a viable option. Um, because as a province, even under the Constitution that exists today, we have an enormous amount of power. And that's a good thing. And we need a party that is willing to represent the best interest of people in Saskatchewan by utilizing the Constitution, by utilizing possibly the notwithstanding clause, to say no to tyranny, to say no to authoritarianism and totalitarianism, where Trudeau is taking us. Just imagine how refreshing it would be if we had a provincial premier that was standing up for the best interest of people in Saskatchewan. The power that a province has, they can do it. We obviously don't have the right premier. We obviously don't have the right party in power in Saskatchewan that can give the finger to the federal government and say, get out of our business. You're not going to treat our people like that. You're not going to treat Canadians, people in Saskatchewan, under this tyrannical government. It's not going to happen. That's what we need. That's who we need in government. And the sooner that happens, the better off we'll be. And then again, if you can bring that leverage to the negotiating table with the federal government, that, hey, if you don't play ball, if you don't want to reform the Constitution so it benefits the people in the West equally, then we're gone. And here's how I know this. Here's the leverage. Here's the people of Saskatchewan polling at 60% to separate. We don't want to separate. We want to keep our country together because that's how strong we have to be to fight off the globalist agenda. But if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to treat us fairly, if you don't want to reform equalization, if you don't want to nurture our natural resources, if you don't want to nurture industry and small business, then out of survival, here's 60% of people in Saskatchewan and Alberta that want to separate. Figure it out. What do you want to do? We've got it. We've got the numbers. So now you're gonna play ball. We're gonna reform the Constitution, regardless of what Quebec says, who has never signed the Constitution. Regardless, we have to look after ourselves. We have to look after our best interests within Confederation. That doesn't mean supremacy of Alberta, supremacy of Saskatchewan. That just means equal fair treatment. And if we have to use the Constitution, then we'll do it. And if we have to reform the Constitution, then that's what we need to do. But you're only going to have that leverage if you have separation in your pocket. We've watched Quebec do it. We've watched them do it for decades. Now's the time we do it. And that doesn't mean I want to separate. I'm a Canadian patriot. I want my country to stay together because we're stronger as a nation. We can lead the world out of globalism if we came together and united under freedom, under liberty, under justice, prosperity. We could pull our country out of the globalist agenda and lead the world out of this garbage agenda that's going to destroy Western civilization, that's going to destroy the idea of liberty, the idea of freedom, the idea of personal rights and property rights. And I mean, just look at the 17 goals of sustainable development and tell me your life won't be completely turned upside down because of it. So, and the provinces can play a huge role in this. They have an enormous amount of power. We just need leaders to lead. We haven't had leaders leading. We have followers. We have rule followers. We have globalist followers that are telling our premiers what to do instead of our premiers telling them to get lost and doing what's in the best interest of their people of the provinces, which is their job. And they've completely ignored that. They've completely dismissed the people they're supposed to represent. They're representing the globalist agenda. They're representing Trudeau. They need to be gone. So, anyway, that is my rant for today. I'm just going to have a quick look here. There's a couple of disturbers that are looking to shake up shit for personal issues. If they actually care about Sask and all the people of Sask, they wouldn't push it, but they are selfish people that are impatient. Buffalo had to build for members up. They didn't jump on COVID because they weren't given that policy direction from members because there hadn't been an official vote for leadership nor policy platform. They didn't sit on their haunches. They were building a party to take on a SAS party. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, Rochelle, but I think, when, just as an example, when I invited Wade Sierra to come and speak, he turns down. And I mean, that's the opportunity that you have to take. You have to show that you're willing to get in the fight. And if you're not, then, what are you doing? So, but I get it, but, most premiers are part of the global. Yeah, of course they all are. Not most, all of them. 100% all of them right now. And you're going to see this sort of thing happening in every province where there's going to be new entities. But anyways, that's a wrap for me tonight. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for sharing. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithms. And same thing on Odyssey. Same thing on DLive. Excuse me. And this will be uploaded to Rumble here shortly. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. I'm going to be doing this a little bit more often these days. As I said, I'm feeling better and I have more energy. And huge kudos to my chiropractor, Greg Hartz. Like I said, every week I go and see him and he loads me up with needles. I feel like a pincushion, right from the top of my head, right down to my toes. And, but it seems to be working, seems to be helping. So thanks a ton to Greg, who's an old friend from high school days. So it's pretty cool. Thanks, Jane. Appreciate it. Thanks, Laurie. Yes, Ellis Ross is fantastic, Kelly. Yes, he does get it. 100%. Ellis is great. I've actually interviewed Ellis a couple of times on my show, and he's fantastic. Anyways, that's a wrap. And remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. All right. Ciao for now.